Hey, everybody, welcome back. Another episode here of Energy of the Untamed Heart. And my guest today is Tina Djuretic. She has a published book called Finding My Sovereignty, available, of course, on Amazon, Kindle and paperback. The cover, OMG, is so gorgeous. I was like, whoa, look at this. And you guys only get the audio version, but the video version of this recording, Tina is the essence of the cover of her book. She is just emanates sovereignty and beauty from her very being. I'm so excited for this talk. Tina's had a journey. She's had a journey from the entertainment industry. She's shifted over to authorship industry. She is a tour guide. She just has an interesting story that I'm hoping everybody will take their gold nugget as it fits for them and resonates with them. Hey guys, you're listening to the Energy of the Untamed Heart podcast, where we talk about uncaging your divinely gifted wild heart to be as free and expansive as you were born to be. My goal is to use our stories, guest interviews, and your questions to tease out what has been keeping your wild heart under wraps. I'm your host, Mielle Fox, and together we will shatter the myths of our old stories to set our wild heart free. So thanks for choosing you and showing up today. Without further ado, Tina, welcome. Welcome to the show. So excited to have you here.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here. What a lovely introduction.
Well, I speaketh the truth. It's just the way it rolls.
That's all
Yeah.
we have, right?
So I sort of stumbled over you, to be honest, as it is when we're doing podcasts and seeking out guests that might be a great fit and have something to share that seems good for both parties involved. And your background, your story, your capacity to pivot, your willingness to be curious, you're walking your way back home to the truth of who you are. All the things are like, check, check, check. Oh, she's the gal for me. So, would you be willing to share a little bit of that for our listeners? How you got from
Absolutely.
there to here?
Yeah, you bet. So
Yeah.
growing up as a child, I had a really just a tough situation, like many people. I think I had very narcissistic parents. I have a bipolar mother, so really mentally, emotionally, physically abusive family. And then when I'm 10 years old, my parents decide to shake things up a little bit and they become born again fanatical Christians. And I mean, really fanatical cult like church. And so things, they didn't get better, they only got worse, as you can imagine. And now they had, of course, the wrath of God on their side as well. So life became a lot more challenging and rules became a lot more strict. And they isolated us and separated us from the rest of the world and put these ridiculous rules. We couldn't get outside information, meaning we weren't even allowed to have a television or a radio or anything like that. Yes, I just dated myself. We had radios. Before we even had, what was the first one? A Walkman? Was that the first one with the cassettes?
I'm older than you. There's a few iterations before the Walkman, by the way. Yeah,
Well, I mean
like
the
reel to
portable, the
reel,
portable.
8-track,
Yeah,
cassette,
yeah.
Walkman.
But the first portable one, right? I think that was a Walkman or anyways.
Oh my gosh.
We weren't allowed to have those things, so regardless. I was like 17, I was still in high school in grade 12 when I finally had enough and left home and tried to find my way in the world as this, on the one hand, incredibly mature, smart, wise beyond her years because of the pain and the suffering, and yet so incredibly stunted in any field that has to do with love or relationships, right? So let's face it, I don't realize that about myself. I just see the mature, how you think you're so smart when you're 17. But this was obvious when I started to date people, which didn't come until much, much later. I was like 26 before I fell in love like really fell in love for the first time. And he didn't love me back. Shocker. I mean, he was my parents, right? Like, it's so obvious. Because they didn't love us, that's for sure. And then, the next one loved me fiercely, like really as I'm trying to recover from the rejection of the first one. The next one comes barreling down the beach with his arms wide open, telling me how gorgeous I am in a sexy French accent. It was so opposite. And it was attention I desperately needed. I was 28 years old now. I needed to feel like someone loved me. And as far as I understood, he's the first person who ever loved me. Again, parents didn't love me. So he's the first person. And he was a drug addict. Of course he was. And I struggled to get out of that relationship for 7 years. That was a tough one. I tried to leave many times. I did leave several times, but he just kept coming back. I mean, I could not get rid of this one. And it was all roller coaster. It was all intense emotions. It was all beautiful human being and drug addict, and beautiful human being and drug addict. And in the end, the two of them become one as you realize there really is no separation between the two. It takes years to get there, right? On the other side of my life, I'm traveling the world. It was all I ever wanted, was to see the world. So I have these extreme highs in my life of travel and experiences, and I'm such an adventurous human being. Nothing I wouldn't try. So it was all about that. But in my relationships, my God, I was a disaster. And that friendships too, like it wasn't just romantic partners. If you're attracting narcissists, you're attracting narcissists, right? If that's the frequency in your body, that goes for everything. Even the church was one giant narcissist, if you think about it, right? Like
Yeah.
it's all narcissism. By the time I got to my third partner, my God, I'm mid 40s. I should know better. And someone from my past comes back into my life, not a romantic partner, but comes back in a romantic way, someone from college. And so now it comes with this beautiful story, too. Not only is he my type, tall, dark, handsome, incredibly broken, because apparently that was my type, but emotionally unavailable. But he's a firefighter, and we've both grown up and matured, or at least is how we're seeing it. And we have this incredibly beautiful fairy tale story. And oh my God, everything about it was so beautiful. And I was finally getting my perfect life. I'm real outdoorsman. We spent a lot of time camping and did road trips and being outdoors and all of those wonderful things that I loved. And lo and behold, 2 years later, he is bipolar, just like my mother. And I didn't see it coming. And that brought me to my knees, right? Like the deception, his deception, my own deception. Like, how could you have so much experience in this area and you still didn't see it coming? How stupid are you, right? Because that's going to be your internal conversation now, is berating yourself as well, right? How blind, how stupid are you? And then, of course, for me, the added deception from the universe, like, how dare you deliver me finally after all the pain and suffering of my life? Because, just tragedy after tragedy happened in my life. Again, if that's your frequency, right? But, here's my monologue, my internal voice is like, how dare you deceive me with this beautiful love story, making me feel like for the first time in my life, I'm finally going to win. I finally have this beautiful partner, this amazing human being, this beautiful life I've created. It was a glass house, it was all an illusion. But I was angry, and that is what made me that was the catalyst. That's what did it for me. Where I just went, something's wrong with me. Like, this is the point where I stop asking the universe, what's wrong with all the men out there? And I start to go internal and go, no, something's wrong with me. If I only attract this kind of man, why can't I attract someone who's healthy? Why? Really? And when we start asking those questions, the answers are gonna come. That is the right? That is the door.
That's a little
Threw
bit of
that
the
door
be
open.
careful what you wish for, right? So,
Yeah.
oh my gosh, you're so beautiful. I mean, internally, your whole being, your soul is just like so sparkly and shiny, and you have a beautiful resilience in your capacity to kind of laugh a little bit at yourself, even though you're telling what comes across as holy tragedy, right?
Mm.
So, what I really value and honor and appreciate in you sharing your story is one, you didn't give up. The resilience of let me keep trying, which really you got to have some resilience if you want to crack the shell and get back home and figure it out and go back to the within and all the things, which, we all know this. But two, is it not clearly the most it's funny but not funny reminder that the universe will continue to serve up your lesson
Yeah.
until you finally go, oh, oh, got you. Okay. So instead of me asking, what can you do with everything outside of me? Could you possibly help me with what I need to do inside of me so
Exactly.
I can create what I think I'm looking for instead of me looking for it in all these men and looking for it in all these relationships and looking for it in everything outside of me. Your come to whatever moment you want to call it was, oh, got
Mhm.
you. I see it's not outside of me. I see there's got, I must be some kind of integral player in this whole thing here. How about I
Yeah,
start looking within? Yeah. So good.
absolutely.
I mean,
Yeah.
hard to hear, and I'm like, oh my gosh, we've had like parallel lives, but yeah, 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 yeah.
Well, for those of us that are meant to be either teachers or healers, that is usually our life, isn't it? Because we need to be brought to this place where we can be a teacher and a healer. Nobody wants to go get healing from someone who has no idea what suffering feels like. How are you supposed to teach me or empathize with? Well, no, I'll take that back. I think people can have empathy for a situation they've never been through, but the understanding and the wisdom comes from experiencing it. And it's twofold, right? As you said, not only is the lesson going to keep repeating itself until it's learned, right? And that's on us. But also, when we have a beautiful mission to be a teacher or a healer, a way shower on this planet, like yourself or myself, we go through these tough situations, and it's what makes us good at what we do, right?
I think that's true. And I think when someone's looking for a mentor or a teacher or whatever phrase one wants to use for it, you absolutely don't want the person who's never experienced the thing that you're trying to work through because it's a little bit like, well, how do they really know? Because they haven't walked my path. They haven't been in my shoes. Now we're never really in anybody else's exact shoe, I will say that, of course, but I certainly feel like a lot of times I'm no different than the next, to be honest. We're all a little banged up and bruised. If you're a human on earth, hello, you're going to be a little banged up and bruised. That's the journey, and there's a reason for that. You're here for all of it. That's part of the lesson learning, lesson giving. But I really feel that those of us who have the drive that we want to use our experiences to help others along their journey, we just have to be one or two steps beyond where that individual might be at that given moment. It doesn't make us the expert. It doesn't make us any better, worse than the next. We all have our story. And so I mean, honestly, that's the whole purpose of why do I do the podcast? I do the podcast because I want to hear everybody's story, your story, even though it's a little parallel to mine. It's just that much different in how you experience it and how you convey it. And then, of course, through your book, how you write it, that's going to be a little different than what I'm going to present. And because of that, the reader, the listener, is going to abstract or integrate or assimilate whatever foo-foo phrase you want to use, suck it all in, take what they need, take what you say may resonate with one individual. I could say the exact same sentence and it's not going to ring true because our personal vibrational expression is just that much more tweaked from one to the other. And so for me, I so value the conversations that I hold with people because their energetic language of love through their vulnerability, through their story will resonate with the individual that best needs to receive it in that way. And so I love
Absolutely.
I love how you are presenting and sharing and expressing. The other thing that is coming through so clearly, and I hear you kind of giggle at yourself, like, well, of course I attracted another bipolar person. Of course I attracted another narcissist. Of course I got gaslit again. And you sort of giggle at yourself
Yeah.
because really there is a point where it is kind of funny in a way. In a weird way, it's kind of funny, and you can either cry about it or laugh about it. But the other piece is as you speak of it now, it's very clear that you don't hold on to that old piece of the story as, so how does this, it's not that it doesn't have a feeling to you, of course it does, but there's no longer this whole story attached to the event as you've moved through it. And
Yeah.
that unconditionality of being able to not hold the attachment, I think is such a breakthrough moment for people. And I'm curious, what drove you to share the expression through writing versus through whatever, acting, dance, singing, playing golf? What was your drive for you that said, I got to write this shit down?
Well, as crazy as it sounds, because I know it sounds crazy and I don't care. I own my crazy. um, when this incident happened with the last partner, and I realized, like, not just a narcissist, but like actually my mother, like the similarities were actually quite frightening. And when I realized just how similar they were, it was when he started really doing things like her that I started to go, hold like the constant criticism. Oh my God, the never ending criticism just that had me walking on eggshells all the time. I was like, God, this is so familiar, right? Like, as you're trying to sort of deal with all these things. But a part that I didn't really mention is that I blocked childhood when I was growing up. So I don't remember childhood. I remember the broad strokes. I remember some big incidents, but for me, it's like saying chapter 1, the time my dad threw me down the stairs, right? Like I remember that, but I can't picture the scene in my head. I couldn't tell you what color the stairs were on the carpet, or do you know what I mean? Like people have memories of childhood and they're playing the movie in their head. For me, it was more like I have a sentence about what happened, and maybe that feeling, because the feeling is, right, we feel the feels. But I blocked childhood anyways. But I had sisters who remembered everything, every detail. So it was a really bizarre, thing that they remembered everything and I didn't. And throughout my life, I had consulted a couple, I'd say when I was 26, and there is when I had my first sort of spiritual experience. And so, therefore, once I left the church, obviously, I went way away from anything to do with God or religion or anything. And I didn't understand spiritualism. I didn't understand the difference at the time. And then I met this girl. And so then I had one foot in. I like to say I had one foot in from the 90s onwards into spiritualism. I read the Celestine Prophecy. I read about numerology and astrology. And I understood some things, but the rest of it felt very lofty. I think back in the day when I was growing up, people used bigger words, and really, I didn't understand what was being said. So I took what I liked and I left the rest behind, if you will. But when I broke up with this last partner, several things happened at once. First of all, spirit was like, yeah, we're not having one foot in anymore and one foot out. This is your spiritual awakening. It is about to smash you in the face. Number 2, we are unleashing childhood enough for you to remember so that you can heal it. Not all of it. I still don't have the whole picture in my mind, but it started releasing these moments. So I started having nightmares, is what happened. I'm still living with this person. We've broken up, but it takes me 3 months to find somewhere to live, right? I can't just move out. I mean, I'm a tour guide, I'm on the road, and in between being on the road, I'm trying to look for apartments, right? So at any rate, 3 months still stuck in this person's home, where I mean it was like living with the devil. It was so awful. The energy was so intense. I felt like every night when I was sleeping, I actually could feel the weight of something sitting on my chest. I literally felt his demons sitting on my chest, and I couldn't put that into words at that time, but now I understand what that was. I woke up a couple times because I thought someone was choking me. We weren't even sleeping in the same room, so I mean, it's not like he was there. I mean, he was there, but you know what I'm saying, not there. But all of this was going on, and so I shut down. Like, I did not wanna have my pain and my tear first of all, I didn't want him to witness that. I didn't wanna give that to him, if that makes sense. So I shut down knowing that the day I moved out, I would fall apart, but I was barely holding it together as I was fighting, my own childhood memories plus all of his crap attacking me. And so the second I moved out, I asked a girlfriend if she knew any spiritual teachers. I knew I needed help. And she introduced me to a channeler. And so, for those that don't know what a channeler is, this is someone who channels messages and energy and gives it to the person in front of them. I mean, it's a much bigger picture, but that's what I went to go have done. So, I'd never been to a channeler before. At least I didn't know that I had been. It was a new word for me. And man, she's the one who honestly, like, she was such the perfect person for me, and of course she was, because spirit does that, right? I mean, it brought me to my knees. It made me fall apart, spirit, for my own good, right? And then brought me to the person to help me because that's what I needed. So she's the one who really she walked me through my childhood, not the whole thing, not every detail, more the big moments on a spiritual level for my soul, if you will. But she also walked me through briefly my parents' childhood trauma. And that was incredibly powerful for me because it gave me the understanding of generational trauma. It gave me the empathy when I didn't just hear the words, your grandparents beat your parents the same way they did to you. It was more, when your mother was 5, this is what her mother did to her. So again, when I think of an adult, yes, you were beaten as a child. That's one visual. When I picture the child being beaten and know that that was me too, this gives you a different kind of understanding and empathy and the grace to forgive them. And this is why I'm able to talk about these situations and laugh about them and not be triggered by them anymore and not hold any hatred to them anymore. And I have really, truly, and honestly, from my heart, forgiven them. But really, I want people to understand that because you forgive someone, that doesn't mean you have to keep them in your life. And a lot of people don't understand that. Yes, I've forgiven them. I haven't talked to my mother in over 5 years. Why would I? All she does is cause me pain. She doesn't change. So that is my boundary. And by learning to love myself and going within, as you're saying, coming back home, I started to put up boundaries, something I never had for sure prior to that. So
Yeah.
that oh, I didn't say why I wrote. That was the question. Oh my
Oh,
God.
oh my gosh, we
This
forgot the whole
channeler.
question.
I'm so
I
sorry.
got
I
so
forgot
much to
the
say, but you
whole
go
question.
the
So
channeler.
funny.
Go ahead.
So the channeler is the one who said, "You are going to write a book." I had no idea that I was going to do that. I've never written anything before. I'm not a writer. I have a degree in theater. I used to be a jazz singer. I used to be a dancer. I've never written. So she said to me, once all of this was done, this whole session, she said, "Have you ever written anything before?" I said, "Nope." I mean, I'm a couple paragraphs or something, I'm not illiterate, but yes. But, and she said, "Well, it seems that I'm looking at your blueprint now. I'm looking at the Akashic records and you are going to write your story." And I'm like, "Oh no." Right. Like that was actually my reaction. No. And because I thought, oh my God, because of course I haven't started the healing yet. So this is all just new. And I'm going, oh, no, because I knew that meant, first of all, going back and remembering it all. How can you write about something you don't remember? And I knew that that meant doing that for every partner, and I was just like, "Oh, good God, no." I'm someone who walks away from a partner and doesn't go back, right? I don't keep in touch with the people, I don't do that, so I had no desire to go back and relive those stories, but right? Like, at all, and She said, "No, you will do this. This is your job, so to speak." And she said, when you do this, not only are you going to find your own healing, which of course was a beautiful reason to do it for myself. She said, you're going to heal as you do this, and it will be really beautiful and really deep. So she said, just be really honest, really right from the heart. But she said, other people will read it and they're going to relate to your story. If you've been through this, how many people do you think have lived this as well? So if you're brave enough to tell your story from your heart and be really truthful, then other people will relate to it. And she said, your book is a very special thing in the way that it's either going to trigger people or it's going to plant the seed to awaken them. And I thought, oh, isn't that interesting? So she said, you'll trigger people. There will be people that will not like your message. Of course, right? But she said, you will also plant the seeds. And that is the job of this memoir, is to plant the seeds. So you might not know if they had a spiritual awakening. It might come in a week, in 2 weeks, in 3 years for them, or not. But, and I thought, that's a mission I can get behind.
Yeah. And at the end of it, it's not your responsibility when, if, or how they have their spiritual awakening.
Mm.
Your job is exactly as your channeler acquaintance told you, is your job is to show up. Your job is to share the word. Your job is to create the book. Your job is to plant the seed. And in so doing, the ripple, and of course, as I like to say, shifting one heart at a time is my little thing I love to stand behind. That is not necessarily in your control, the when, the how, but just that you're the pebble in the water, and how that expands out into to who is on the receiving side of that part's not your deal. So I'm always so fascinated how spirit chooses to show up and plop in. So I'll share a couple things here with the listeners, which some of this I've shared before, but I'll share it for you because you and I don't really know each other beyond this little visit. Our lives are fairly parallel. Highly dysfunctional upbringing, a lot of bipolar on both sides, a lot of generational trauma, which, like you, I didn't really have my finger on the pulse of that and what that really represented for me. And honestly, it took me until quite a bit later in my life to really grasp and understand the significance of the things that we maybe don't understand as children, and that we carry a lot of childhood trauma into our adulthood. And even though on the outside we're adults, on the inside we're hurt, wounded children. And we carry it. So we look like we got our shit together on the outside, and on the inside we're falling apart. And, we still do the thing. Like, I even hear myself say, oh, sometimes my mom was, she was such a viper or whatever, because honestly, my upbringing was pretty freaking scary, to put it simply. I don't want to say it boastfully, but I'm very resilient. I'm pretty dang tough. Like, it takes a lot to really get to me. And that was my saving grace. That is what allowed me to survive a lot of things that perhaps might have been the kibosh for others, which, whatever, neither here nor there. So the resilience is a double-edged sword, though, because in order to be that resilient, like you, I slammed the door on my heart. I slammed the door on my emotions. And I, like you, as an adult, sought out relationships that I believed fulfilled things that were not fulfilled in my childhood. And as a result, like you, a lot of not very healthy arrangements, a lot of, perpetuating unhealthy lessons, because I clearly wasn't at the place where I recognized and realized, oh, guess what? I need to fix the me before everything else is going to change on the outside. And so I think many of us come to that place of reckoning, or that place of awareness, or that place of awakening, whatever one chooses to call it. And we all get there a little bit different. But that moment where you go, oh, huh, I'm kind of wondering if it's me and not everything around me. That's really a huge ah. The other piece that I really love with your channeler person telling you, yeah, you're going to write a book. Um, some of us, and your answer being, I'm not a writer. Okay. I really have this thing about how we choose to label ourselves. So when people say, oh, hi, Sally. So what do you do? I got to be honest. That question makes me, and excuse the swearing, batshit crazy. Because it's almost like, let me define you by the physical
Your
things that
job.
you do in your world, your job. Like, oh, I'm a cruise director. Oh, I'm a physician. Oh, I'm a writer. Oh, I'm a whatever. Okay, no, you're not. You're an amalgamation of all these different experiences and expressions through your lifetime that your soul is here having. And I realize nobody really wants to go into this huge esoteric discussion of when you say, "Hi, Sally, nice to meet you. So tell me, what is it that you do?" I get that. I really get that. But at the same time, my point is when you say, "I'm not a writer," okay, we don't know we're not a writer. How do we know we're not a writer? Right? Like you don't know what you don't know till you do. And so now you've written this beautiful memoir. And for anybody who hasn't read it, get your ass on Amazon and get a copy because it's so worth it. This beautiful, beautiful memoir. And now you know you're a writer. Oh, hello. How creative, right? So at the end of the day, we're all creators in whatever it is we do, however it is we show up. And that is the beauty of the whole thing. So when people say to me, "Oh, you have all this energy on your podcast." Well, granted, this is my energy. This is how I roll through the world. I'm just very like, bleh. I think this whole gig is like the giant treasure hunt of forever. I think it's fun. I mean, some days are hard and some days aren't, but in the big picture, I'm like, woohoo, glad I'm here. So I, like you, I had an opportunity to participate in a writing venture. Okay, I don't consider myself a writer. I don't consider myself an author, so to speak, but I wrote something and it's available and it's in a book, so therefore I guess I'm a writer, right? But what I did learn, like you, huge, huge healing journey while you are writing and expressing. What I did learn is the place of forgiveness does not equal absolution. Forgiveness does not equal I forgot. Forgiveness does not equal it never happened. Forgiveness does not equal you need to be my BFF. None of that. Forgiveness for me personally, and some of it was forgiving others, but a lot of it was forgiving me, is to release the attachment that we have to those events, those feelings, those situations, those experiences, and not carry them like cinder blocks around our heart anymore and just set that shit down. So I came to realize, like you, your mom could not, with the lack of tools available to her, perhaps have done any better than what occurred. And I don't mean, was it great? Of course it wasn't great. Who wants to get tossed down a flight of stairs? Who wants to live with somebody criticizing 24/7? Who wants, all the things? I understand. But when they don't have any tools and they don't know any better, because guess what? Their parent did the same thing. Is it any wonder that we come out of this a little dinged up? Yeah, okay. So I just love what you share. And I love your energy about what you share and how open you are now to give yourself the permission for forgiveness so that you can shine as brightly as you do. And it's just remarkably beautiful to see. It really is. So I
Oh,
thank
thank you.
you. It's
Thank
really
you.
great. Yeah, it's huge. So moving forward, will we see another book? Now
Uh,
I'm putting you on the spot, right?
this morning I was chatting with the editor and the art, the same art. I want the same person to do the cover because once you find someone you love, you stick with that person. So
Yeah.
when she told me to write the book, um, she says, you're going to write this memoir. And she said, oh, it's really beautiful. Because she's seeing it all in her head, right? She's all there in the Akashic records. And I'm just going, oh my God, when am I supposed to have time to do that? Right? Like, when am I supposed to do that? And she's like, don't worry, it'll take you 2 years. You'll find the time. I see it bound. I see it sitting on a shelf. She's just like writing it in her head, and I'm going, "Cool, can you write the book?" Right? Because you hear voices and I don't. So that'd be great if you could just channel the book. And she said, "And when you're finished with the book, you will start a second book." And I was like, "Whoa, what? I thought you said there would only be one." She said, "Well, there will be one like memoir, right? And she said, you will follow it up with a workbook, a very practical,
Mm.
hands-on workbook. Because she said, the people who come to your book who are in your situation, who then read the book and go, yay, in the end, you found forgiveness. Cool. How? Now, how did you heal? Because I ended on a note of like, I forgive someone, but the work is only starting at that point, right? We all know that. So I ended on the note of that I'm obviously about to go on the healing journey, but I don't go on the healing journey. So the workbook, and thankfully she told me that at the beginning, because as I wrote my memoir, I had to find out how to heal because I didn't know. She said it would take 2 years and I would have the time, and she wasn't wrong. In January 2020 is when I started really writing this book. So I lost my job, as did the rest of the world. I'm in tourism, so that was decimated. And I was really truly isolated for 2 years. So, man, talk about going within. I had nowhere else to go. You couldn't even go outside. So I was literally so internal. It couldn't have been any more internal. But for me, that was a beautiful gift because, well, you wrote, so you understand. When you're writing, there's nowhere to hide. It's all right there in front of you. Everything you've done, everything you've said, every mistake you've ever made, every chance you had to take a different direction, and you didn't. And you see it now because obviously hindsight is 2020. And then you got to work on all that forgiveness. And I didn't know where to go. I couldn't. Right at the beginning, I had a channeled session and a one Reiki session, and those two things kickstarted everything. And then I lost my job. So I couldn't afford, I didn't have the money to even go seek more help. And so I had to figure out how to do it and how to do it for free. And I took notes for 4 years as I healed layers, because as you know, the healing never stops. So it was all those big picture things I had to heal first. Then when I went through and did round two of the book, it was like middle picture things. And then round three of the book was like details now. And I still get triggered even now, but I recognize it. I know how to deal with it, and I can deal with it in 5 minutes, and then it's all over, and I've gotten to the root of it and forgiven it or whatever needs to be done. So it does get so much easier. But of course, at the beginning, it's all big. You've got to analyze everything and dig deep. But I took notes the whole time. So I have just handed off 2 days ago, or even yesterday, to my editor, my completed workbook on how to heal, or how I did it anyways, right? Because I think there's many ways, and really practical, hands-on things, and that don't cost money as well. So that, of course, I think Reiki and therapy and these things, I think they're amazing. Don't get me wrong. I don't think everyone can afford it. So I wanted to make sure that the workbook itself had all these practical things to do that also weren't big words and lofty ideas. I don't want anyone getting lost or overwhelmed. In fact, the name of the book is called Lost in the Overwhelm. I think,
Perfect.
right? We get
It's
lost in the
perfect because
overwhelm.
I think we all get lost in our own self perpetuated overwhelm because we drink the Kool-Aid that something that if somebody else is providing the thing and it costs XYZ and it has a fancy name, well, that must be the gift wrap. And the
Mhm.
reality is there's no way that the setup that the universe and spirit want for us to come back home to who we are, to our heart, to our soul is so complex that it requires you to spend your life savings doing it. Now, do I think there are things investing in yourself? Of course, but you can invest in yourself for free. Hello. Where there's a will, there's a way. So kudos to you with the workbook. Awesome. So before we wrap up, tell our listeners, how do they either find you or your work? And when might we anticipate this next piece of your journey to show up?
I have an author's website, so that's probably the easiest place to go just to find all of it. It's www.sovereignandsage.com. sovereignandsage.com. I have the podcasts that I'm on that are there, so yours will end up there. And I have the memoir there as well with a link to Amazon. But you can just go to Amazon if you wanted to as well. And my book is called Finding My Sovereignty. Finding My Sovereignty. So yeah, those are the two places that I'll be. And I'm anticipating, I want to overestimate this time because I underestimated last time as a first time author. So I'm looking at June to put out the workbook.
Spectacular. I love this. I'm so excited we made time for this talk. You are an absolute gem. I cannot wait to see the workbook. The book is lovely. You are lovely. And I just can't thank you enough. With so much gratitude, Tina. This has been the nicest chat. So good.
Oh, good. I'm so glad that we were able to do this. It was a pleasure meeting you and to be on your podcast.